Buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches, donde quiera que
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to the second session on the virtual seminars series, long-term scenarios for developing national clean energy transition plans in Latin America. I am Antonio Levy, the regional coordinator of the GET.transform program. Well, before I continue, let me show you this slide. We have a simultaneous interpretation available through Zoom. You can access this function with the buttons that you have on the bottom of the screen. As to our agendas, a welcome address by the organizations involved, presentations by Arturo Molina and Guadalupe Gonzalez from Costa Rica and Panama, respectively, then a discussion with the panel members, an interactive poll and questions from the audience, and then closing. Also, through the Zoom application that you have in your computers, you will be able to communicate with us. This is a joint initiative of the International Agency of Renewable Energy, IRENA, the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, ECLAC, and the program GET.transform that I represent. The purpose is to provide a platform to exchange experience and knowledge of government energy planner officials in Latin America in the development and use of energy scenarios to implement national plans towards a clean energy transition. So this takes place within the framework of the Technical Forum for Planners for a Plan led by ECLAC together with GET.transform. And this is part of IRENA's activities, the activities that IRENA organizes for the clean energy transition. Well, the network, the LTES network by its English acronym. Every week, we hold discussions on presentations by two members of the region. We're going to have, in general, 10 to 12 countries. They will be represented by officials from the government agencies involved in energy planning. To continue, and before the presentations, I'd like to ask the coordinators to welcome you as well. First, we have Pablo Carvajal, an associate program official from IRENA. Go ahead, Pablo. Good morning, good afternoon. Can you hear me well? Thank you very much, Antonio. I am Pablo Carvajal from IRENA. I work in support to energy planning. I'd like to welcome you to this series of virtual seminars that we have designed together with ECLAC and GET.transform. For a couple of years now, IRENA has been exploring scenarios for energy planning at government level. We acknowledge and recognize that in our region, in Latin America, we have a great experience in the use of scenarios. However, in the context of this clean energy transition, well, the borders for scenarios have to go beyond their limits. And this is the context where we want to hold this discussion, how countries are adapting their planning, their policy documents, which have been based on long-term scenarios, to get prepared for the transition. We recognize that scenarios are the cornerstone, the foundation for any energy plan, and this is what we want to explore with you. We recognize and acknowledge that scenarios are a key tool to open up dialogue, to hold discussions with many stakeholders, to share the looking forward vision for our countries. Well, welcome. And welcome Costa Rica and Panama for showing or sharing your presentations today with us. Thank you. Well, Ruben Contreras, you have the floor. Go ahead, Ruben. Thank you very much, Antonio. I hope you can hear me well. Well, for us as ECLAC, This is a very important activity. We thank Irina and Get.transform for being with us, moving forward towards long-term energy planning. As you know, ECLAC, since 2017, has been working, trying to put all the entities working in energy together, not only in the region, but globally, in order to make progress towards planning and through the forum. And so I'd like to thank, of course, our uh, partner, associate, uh, Get.transform, because this is enriching and this is good for all the countries. And we're going to learn from the planning that every country is doing. We have to understand what we all are doing. Not all of us plan in the same way. We have to uh, get to know the best practices. In this way, we will become a more renewable region, a more sustainable region, capable of facing the challenges to come in the next 20, 30 years. And I am referring not only to energy transformation, but to all the technological changes, digitalization, electromobility, and a number of challenges that are expecting for us, waiting for us in the future. So I'd like to thank you, particularly Guadalupe Gonzalez, Director of Electricity of the National Secretariat of Energy of Panama, and also um, Arturo Molina, a technical expert from the Planning Secretariat of the Energy Subsector in Costa Rica. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ruben. Well, I was dealing here with technology. I'm sorry. Thank you for your welcome words. It's of key importance to have international cooperation of multilateral agencies in the region. On behalf of Get.transform, this is an important opportunity for us also to cooperate both with IRENA and our strategic partner, ICLAC. And Get.transform is a technical assistance program in the public sector on energy transformation, development sustainable, and the achievement of the climate goals. We have also collaboration with Sweden and Austria, among others. So this is a great opportunity, as I said. In our continent, we all speak the same language. However, sometimes we don't know very well the realities of other countries, and there is a lot that we can learn from what we're doing. So this is an opportunity to share experiences and knowledge, to learn lessons, and this is important for energy transformation, indeed. With no further ado, I am pleased to be the moderator of this seminar together with Ruben. Well, let's move forwards. The first presentation is by Arturo Molina, a chemical engineer. He is the advisor to the Planning Executive Secretariat of the Energy Subsector. He participates in the development of plans policies related to energy development, the promotion of renewables and energy efficiency. He has been in the teams working on the development of plans to meet demand in energy. So allow me to give the floor to Arturo, but a couple of directions first for interpretation purposes. You have to use the button that you see on the screen to choose the channel of your preference. Well, this is a campaign. We have the participation of a number of countries. The next event will be with Ecuador and Uruguay on March the 3rd. You are all invited. And today, after Costa Rica, we will have Panama, then 20 minutes for discussions with the moderator, Ruben, and the panel members, and then Paul and questions, and finally closing. Okay, so Arturo Molina has the floor, a technical expert from the Planning Executive Secretariat of the energy sector in Costa Rica.
Sí.
Can you hear me well? Can you show my presentation, please?
Perfecto. Buenos días, muchas gracias por
Good morning, everybody, for this invite. On behalf of Costa Rica, it's a great pleasure to be here to present the cases we have worked on
en este tema de escenarios de largo plazo.
in long-term scenarios.
Por favor, la siguiente.
Next.
Sí, para iniciar quería
To
hacer
begin
tal
with,
vez un comentario
I'd
general
like to
sobre
make a general comment
los mecanismos, digamos, tradicionales de
on
planes
traditional planning
que
mechanisms
están basados en la prospección.
compared against
Es importante entender
prospect
esto porque
approaches. This must be well understood.
normalmente todos los países hemos iniciado
Usually,
desde hace
in all
muchos años
countries, for many years,
haciendo esta tarea
we have been doing
hacer proyecciones y sobre todo
forecasts
basándonos en lo que llamamos proyecciones
based
extrapolatorias
on
del pasado,
extrapolations from the past.
que lo que hacen es
And by
básicamente
doing this,
pues ver qué pasó
we are just checking
históricamente y
what
tratar
happened
de
is
predecir ese
historically,
comportamiento
and
y
then
predecir
based on that
lo que va a
performance,
pasar
we
en el
try to
futuro.
predict what will
Por
happen in
más
the
que
future.
los mecanismos tradicionales
These
ya no
traditional
permiten
mechanisms do not allow us,
ciertas cosas, ¿verdad?
though,
Sobre todo cuando estamos enfrentando
to
cambios
do
muy
better,
bruscos.
particularly when we are facing
Por lo tanto,
disruptions
digamos,
and
no
disruptive
son
changes.
apropiados ya
Therefore, they are not
para lograr
suitable
escenarios más realistas de lo que
to
pudiera
develop
llegar a
more
pasar, sobre
realistic
todo
scenarios
dado
as to
que
what could
la
happen.
generación de política
And
en particular
also,
política
they
que
are not
esté
suitable for the development
para
of
implementarlos.
policies to
Entonces,
address those
por esa
changes.
razón, digamos, una
For this
de los
reason,
enfoques, ¿verdad? Se está aplicando
an approach which is being
más
applied
recientemente es el
more
enfoque
recently
basado en la
is
prospección,
based on
que permite hacer
prospecting.
una mayor consideración
With this, we can now consider
en cuanto a anticipar este cambio de transformación.
other aspects in order to anticipate transformation changes.
Que haya
This
una
approach
mayor
requires
participación cuando
large participation of
cuando
stakeholders.
se está realizando el proceso de formulación de las políticas
It's a
públicas,
process that
pero
requires
también
participation when
obviamente
designing public
que
policies, of course.
digamos, se debe apuntar
And also,
hacia una
the
priorización de
purpose
inversiones
is to
basadas en los
prioritize
escenarios futuros,
investments
basados
based
en los
upon
escenarios
future
históricos.
scenarios. Next slide, please.
La siguiente, ok. Entonces, pues hay varios casos
There
en
are
los
a
que
number
Costa
of
Rica ha
cases
aplicado estos escenarios de
to
largo
which we
plazo
have applied
y
long-term
quería
scenarios in
comentarles
Costa Rica.
principalmente, bueno, aquí les puse algunos
Here
de
we
ellos, el
have
Plan
an
Nacional de
example of some
Energía,
of them, the National Energy
que se
Plan,
promulgó en el 2015,
which was passed in
recientemente está la
2015.
contribución nacionalmente determinada
Recently,
del NS,
the
informe
determined
que recién se
National
publicó
Contribution
a finales del año
2020,
pasado,
published
y
last year,
el Plan Nacional de Transporte
the
Eléctrico y el
National
Plan Nacional de
Electric
Descarbonización.
Transportation Plan, and the
Particularmente voy
Decarbonization
a hablar
Plan.
de dos de estos,
I'm going to
que
focus
son
on
el
two
Plan Nacional de
cases today,
Energía
the National
y
Energy
la
Plan
contribución nacionalmente determinada,
and the
para explicar
nationally
brevemente cómo se
determined
construyeron
contribution,
y cómo
to explain
se,
how we
digamos,
developed
aplicó un
these
poco
plans
esta
and how we
prospección.
applied our
Pues el
methodology.
Plan Nacional de Energía,
Energy National Plan.
tenemos que, bueno, esto fue un proceso
This
participativo, se
was a
aprobó el año
participative
2014,
process. It took
se
place,
hizo por medio de
or
un
it
diálogo
started in 2014. It
ciudadano.
took place for many years. We did a
Entonces,
national
ese diálogo
consultation. We
permitió
had a
incorporar
dialogue with the citizenship.
una gran cantidad de sectores
Many
que
sectors
tenían
participated in this
visiones e
dialogue.
intereses
They
acerca
had
del uso
different
energético
interests and
y
views
con
as to
objetivos
energy,
el
and the
establecimiento de
purpose
líneas de
was
acción. Es
to
decir,
develop and
cuál sería la
define
orientación
guidelines for
que
action.
debería tener la política hacia
What
dónde
should
debería
be the
caminar el
direction of our
país,
policy?
pero
Where should we
todavía sin
move towards as a country?
marcar metas específicas
And we should
sino
also
solamente, bueno, los
establish
criterios,
specific goals,
digámoslo así,
routes to follow.
hacia donde se tenían que encaminar las
We had to
políticas.
define
Estamos
the
hablando
direction for our efforts. Next.
Este proceso, bueno, constó de cuatro
This
fases.
process
Cada
consisted of
primera
4
fase se
phases.
reunieron todos
First
los sectores,
phase, regional
dialogaron
fora
con
were
los
held,
legisladores,
dialogue was
plantearon
established with legislators.
una propuesta preliminar
There was a preliminary
que se elaboró
proposal
por el
made.
Ministerio de Ambiente y
It was
Energía,
prepared by the Energy and Environment
presentada a los
Ministry.
diferentes
It was
sectores para que
presented to
ofrecieran
the various sectors so that they would give their
recibieron una
feedback.
serie
We received,
comentarios,
indeed, their
opiniones
comments,
por parte de los
remarks
diferentes sectores.
from the different
Después de
sectors.
esto, se pasó a una segunda
Then we
fase que se
moved
llama
to the second phase,
las mesas de diálogo,
roundtables.
donde ya digamos,
There,
se reunieron estos sectores
through
de
roundtables,
acuerdo
we
a
gathered all the
una
sectors.
representación
Each roundtable had to have
de los,
the
digamos,
representation of
representantes de los
a
diferentes
number
sectores
of
donde se fueron
actors
discutiendo
or stakeholders.
los temas
In
importantes que
roundtables,
iban
we
a
discussed a
resolver
number of
posteriormente.
topics, uh,
En la tercera fase, ya con
policy
toda esta
topics,
información
indeed.
sistematizada, las mesas de
Phase
diálogo,
3,
el INAE
based
procesó
on the
y
information
crearon
from the roundtables, a document was prepared,
el documento del Plan Nacional de Energía,
the National Energy Plan draft
en
document.
una cuarta fase,
And in
ya
phase
después se hace
4,
una devolución a los grupos
we
que
sent back
participaron
the document to
en
the
el
groups
proceso
that participated in
para
the
ya tener
process
una última
so that
retroalimentación
they
y
would
validación
review
de las
it and
políticas que se habían
validate it.
rescatado
They
en el
would
documento.
validate the
Y ya
policies
pasamos entonces a la
expressed in the
siguiente.
document. Next.
Eh, Posteriormente y recientemente, el año pasado,
Recently, starting
basado
last
en este
year,
plan,
and based
se
on this
procedió a hacer
plan,
un ensayo de
we then
simulación donde se
decided to do some
sintetiza
modeling.
un modelo,
We
un
applied
modelo de energía
an energy
para
model
determinar varias cosas.
to define a number of
Este estudio de
things.
modelación del Plan
This
Nacional de
modeling
Energía
study for the
eh,
National Energy Plan
tomó las acciones estratégicas del plan
took
y
action,
se realizó
the
un
actions in the plan.
prospectus
A
considerando
prospect analysis was
los
made,
diferentes escenarios
considering the
de la política,
different scenarios in the
esas
policy,
orientaciones que estableció el plan de energía.
those
El
directions
objetivo
designed
fue
under the
estimar
energy plan. And the
los
purpose
escenarios
was to estimate the
en la
impact of those
composición
scenarios
de las
in terms of
emisiones
the composition of
LTES
matrix, emissions, and
y también
investments,
proponer
and
números o
also
indicadores para este
to
plan de energía
propose
y asimismo como capacitar
performance
a los
indicators and
expertos.
goals, and
En
also to
realidad,
train
nosotros
the
como
CEPSE
CEPSE
personnel. CEPSE is the
no
planning
somos
subsecretariat.
todavía unos
At the
expertos en el manejo
secretariat, we
de
are
este
not
modelo. Es
experts
un
still
modelo
in
recientemente elaborado
managing this
por la
model. This
Universidad de
is a
Costa
recent
Rica.
model developed by the
Es basado en
University
los
of Costa
indicadores
Rica. It is based
que
on
ofrecieron
important key
estos
elements
estos escenarios.
that allow for the development of scenarios like this.
Con esto,
Next slide, please.
bueno, concluimos el tema del Plan Nacional
Well,
de
so
Energía
we
y la
completed
reflexión
our
también
energy plan.
sobre
And by the way, I'd
una
like to
contribución nacional
refer to the
denominada LNS
nationally determined
2020.
contribution, NDC 2020, we call it, in Costa Rica.
Bueno, esta NS, digamos,
NDC
se construyó a
2020
partir de
was
elementos,
built
bueno, dos
based
tipos de elementos.
on
Los
two
elementos
types of elements,
cuantitativos,
quantitative elements,
ahí se incluye una modelación
including
que
modeling
tuvo también participación de
with
diferentes
the
grupos,
participation of a
y
number of stakeholders,
cuantitativos,
and
donde se
also
crearon una
qualitative
serie de
elements.
escenarios
A number of scenarios were
como
developed
escenarios narrativos, donde también participaron grupos interesados
based
en
on
el tema del
the
NDC
input of
para
groups
lograr una
involved in
conclusión.
NDC.
Pasamos a la siguiente.
Next.
En cuanto a los elementos cuantitativos,
As to quantitative elements,
pues están
on the left
desarrollados
on the
con base
screen,
en los modelos
they
que se
were
llaman
developed based upon a
GET.transform,
climate
que es
action
una
model.
serie de participación de la Universidad de Costa Rica
The
en el
University of
desarrollo de
Costa
estos
Rica
modelos
participated in the development of these models,
y el liderazgo de la Dirección de Cambio Climático del
and
MINAE.
also we have the participation of the Direction for Climate Change of the
Definitivamente el
Ministry,
tema de cambio climático siempre está
DCC.
relacionado con el tema
Climate
energético.
change has a lot to do with energy,
Podríamos
of
decir,
course.
se parte de los modelos de energía
So
y
we
se amplía
usually use
a
energy
otros
models and we
temas
expand those models
digamos que
to
también
other
incluyen
topics
el
or
agua
themes,
y la
including
tierra.
water
Esto
and
se realizó
the ground.
con el aporte de numerosas personas
We had the contribution of many entities, international and national organizations, and individuals who helped to define our purpose and develop our work. And on the side of qualitative elements, we have a number of planning sessions were conducted based upon future scenarios. We also had the participation of key stakeholders. These stakeholders are involved in the climate change and emissions control. We also built a number of socioeconomic and environmental narrative scenarios, or descriptive scenarios, I better say. This means that we describe scenarios in the future, and with this, we are then able to explore uncertainty and obstacles to reaching the climate goals. So by defining the impact of these scenarios on each sector, we were able to prove the feasibility of the climate current policies, and we were able to provide recommendations to increase the robustness of those policies. Next one. This is to conclude. I don't know how much time I have left. Okay, I think I'm doing fine. Well, as to the evolution of modeling capabilities of climate action in Costa Rica, here I have this table. It's a summary table, how we have evolved through time. In the first column, or we have the first model. This was the TIMES model, TIMES. It was used to develop the National Plan for Decarbonization. This TIMES model included energy and transportation, but then later a change was made and we moved to a different platform and we use osmosis. This is osmosis CR. This is another model on energy and transportation. And later, based on this osmosis model, we developed another one, the CLEW, C-L-E-W. It includes the use of land and water. This is to determine the relationships between energy, land, and water, just to be able to complete the modeling of the more comprehensive and encompassing policies. Another approach was robust decision-making based on a model. Here, we analyzed many scenarios in order to determine how robust policies are and how can we improve them, particularly decarbonization policies. I know this is a very high-level summary of what we have done in the country. There is more than this. There are many, many other things, a lot of details that I would like to explain and present to you, but for the sake of time, due to time restrictions, I'm just presenting this high-level summary. And this is the end, and I am here available to entertain any questions that you may have. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Arturo. We're doing very well with time, so if there is a need, later you can add anything in the questions session. Well, no, I don't have anything else. Well, of course, if in the questions you want more clarification, I am available. Of course, it will be a pleasure. Perfect. So the format is 2 presentations first, and then with Ruben, we're going to have a group discussion, and at the end, Q&A. Okay, so I'll remind all the participants that you have to use the chat function in Zoom to send your questions. Thank you very much, Arturo. Next, we have Dr. Guadalupe González.
electromecánica con doctorado en ingeniería eléctrica y es directora también de electricidad de la Secretaría Nacional de Energía, donde se encarga del desarrollo e
She's
implementación.
the director, basically, who is just in charge of the energy policies in Panama, especially in the electrical sector. And Dr. Gonzalez she just participates in different scientific committees like the Commission for Sciences. She's a senior member in the AAA. And since 2017, she is a part of the board of administrators of the Commission for Energy. She has just written many papers and she participated in different congresses. So I'm going to give the floor to Dr. Gonzalez Guadalupe. Dr. Guadalupe Gonzalez, good morning to all of you. I'm extremely grateful for this opportunity to participate in this event. Actually, in Panama, we have been working very hardly on the planning, long-term and mid-term planning, and also we just focused on our energy transition. Can you just move on, please, to the next slide? Brilliant. The next slide, please. Okay, thank you very much. So as I told you, here you have all the information on this slide in Panama since 2015, to be honest, with the publication of the National Energy Plan 2015-2050. So basically, this is how Panama decided to work through a combination between the development of multiple scenarios that go through different analysis processes, as our colleague from Costa Rica presented also. But also we have another more participative approach, basically, which is the approach that I will be highlighting more in my presentation. This collaboration that we had since 2015 throughout all this process of the development of the Energy National Plan that was very well received by the citizenship. And we had very good participation from all the different rural communities, from different actors in the sector who are economically very active. We had also participation from the academia, from the government. The energy plan, since the beginning, we saw that the citizens saw this change like a positive change, and they were just very happy to be a part of this process. And then in 2018, well, actually in 2017, we revised the plan because as we were just moving forward, the technologies were developing and the different scenarios were just changing. So we saw that these technological changes that we saw at a world level just pushed us to do some variations. So basically, we're constantly revising our plan. And also we saw that we needed also to have a way that is much more clear to really have very clear goals and objectives. So we needed to have roadmaps that really allowed us to verify or validate all the different policies that we're just putting in place as a national energy secretariat and the energy policy of the country. So we needed to follow up just to make sure that all these steps were correctly done. So basically, we developed those strategies in 2018, the strategy for electrical mobility, for example, and this was the result of a collaboration between the private companies, the government, and the academia. And we saw also firsthand with the development of this particular strategy how all the different stakeholders in the sector were extremely empowered, and they were protectors of everything that was presented in the planifications, and not only at the level of development scheme that we designed in 2018. After this, we had a new government, and but it kept, following it because it was a document that was sustainable, that was very highly pertinent, and the new government basically just followed up implementing this plan. So this was the strategic plan to develop all the different strategies in our secretariat. In our planification, long-term planification, we just analyzed the technological changes. We pinpointed the needs, the different mandates from the UN through the Sustainable Development Goals. For example, our energy sector needs to be sustainable, needs to be sure, needs to be affordable, etc. We need to carry out the energy transition. It's a process that will develop throughout years. It's not a radical transformation in 1 or 2 years. So basically, we need to keep on transforming in order to make sure that absolutely all the different stakeholders who participate in the energy sector, they have to be aware that there is a change that is coming. So through the different climatic actions that we carry out and dissemination actions, etc. So with the sustainable development, with the decarbonization, with the democratization also of energy, these were just the central axis of our work. So we developed strategies. We developed 5 strategies for the electrical sector, 2 for the what happened with the presentation here? My presentation was lost, but anyway, and the strategy for a cross-cutting strategy. Excuse me, something happened. Don't worry. Okay, so basically, we reinforced the institutional reinforcement, if you want, of the different basis. So what we have been doing since last year was just putting all the different pillars that are just priority lines of action that in the Secretariat we believed that they really framework these actions. And we carried out public consultation processes. We validated all the decisions, and these are the lines of action. These are the directions that we have to concentrated in order to carry out the Panama energy transition. So basically, we did it exactly the same as with electric mobility, and now we're just working on universal access. And this is the workshop that we're developing in Panama. And also a few weeks ago, we just talked about distributed generation. So basically, through different workshops, we establish a dialogue with the different actors, not only the entrepreneurs, but also, for example, in terms of universal access, we're just talking with community leaders, regional leaders, people who are just living the problems, who know the problems, in order for them to help us to put the priorities that we have to focus on in the next years. And through this, we just created a road map through all these strategies, and in order to see how in a period of 10 years we can just reach very specific goals that quantitatively will allow us to follow up on the medium term and long-term policies that we created for our countries. And we elaborated this for the 5 strategies for the electric sector, for also the combustible fuel sector also, and also we started with the government to identify all the different changes that we have to carry out in our institutions in terms of political framework, regulatory framework, etc., in order to give a positive response to these changes and this transition that we see. And also, these changes have to be done in a comprehensive, integrated way, because everything that we carry out, for example, in the electric mobility can have an impact on universal access, on distributed energy, etc. So all the different analysis they have to develop in a comprehensive way, basically. And the quantitative analysis, basically, these just back all these lines of actions that we're just developing. And of course, we just worked with UN environment also in order to be based on the structure called the green economy model that was developed for Panama. So UN environment developed a decarbonization plans for Latin America. And we asked them just to create a model for Panama. So basically, we based our priority lines, our main strategic documents for energy transitions. We carried out an economic analysis and based on the quantitative information, integrating all the information that in the Secretariat of Energy we have received, all the different quantitative analysis that we're just developing for all the different strategies that we have put together. So basically, this green economy model is fed with all this econometric information. And so basically, we study the different scenarios for 2024, 2030, 2040, and 2050. So through this, we are just reviewing our energy planification at a long term, but quantitatively, we are just following up how it is going to be developed in 2024, 2030, 2040, 2050. So in 2024, 2030, 2040, so in 2024, we are going to finish all the administrative process. And what we want to do is that all what we are just developing, we need to empower all the different members and stakeholders in order for them to be very important stakeholders at a state level in 2030. And in terms of climate change, fight against climate change. And also we presented in 2020 an update of this strategy, and one of the most relevant axes that received quantitative contributions was the energy sector, because it was really based on information. It's based on our strategic document for energy transition and the different scenarios that we have proposed. So this green economy model that we implemented with UN environment includes different sectors like population, economy, demand, etc. So basically, we carried out a comprehensive analysis that allows us. Can I go to the next slide, please? Next slide. So basically, depending on the different scenarios, so here you can see we have a scenario of business as usual. So how Panama is just implementing some of the measures in the green scenario, so the renewable technologies, etc. So we have also the energetic, we have an energetic model that considers natural gas. We have the electric mobility that is being implemented in the country. So our policies, if they were maintained as we have been developing them since 2012, so how the country would be if we followed the business as usual plan. And then we have another scenario of agenda for energy transition. So basically using the energy sector as a pack for the economic reactivation and relaunch after COVID in the country. So we worked with different stakeholders within the government in order to validate our data. And here we started, for example, studying things like electrical mobility with much more active, maybe conservative actions, but that are based on the strategy of electric mobility. We're just talking with the generation to have a higher percentage of generation of energy through renewables. And also we are just working in order to become a much more greener country. We're just working in innovating the public transportations. We have a metro here in Panama, so we're going to develop this metro with the rest of the lines that we have in the rest of Panama. So basically, we're just trying to include in our objectives all the different actions and lines of work within the energy transition plan, and we have a scenario to make Panama completely decarbonized in 2050. So we're just concentrating on the agenda for energy transition. So these are the three scenarios that allow us to carry out a quantitative analysis and see how all this impacts not only the economy of the country, but also talking about employment, jobs, benefits related to health, etc. So we're studying depending on the different scenarios that we'll be adopting. So we are going to need to carry out some investments at a national level, but we are going to have all these positive impacts. So this document that we're just working with the UN is going to be published in the month of March. So that's why I just cannot give you more specific figures here, but just to give you a preliminary idea. So we're just working the energy sector with a higher characterization of renewable energies within the energy mix. This is going to reinforce in general in a significant way the ambitions not only in fighting climate change, but also the economic development initiatives and visions that we have for the country. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So here basically we are not only we are seeing how a policy, for example, is having an impact on other sectors. So we're just trying to work in a team in order to move together until the objective 2050. So basically we're just working in different committees. So we have the interinstitutional committees where we have the academia, the private sector, and the government who are just participating in each one of the actions. So we move on from the planning, which is the moment that we are now, and in green we have the electric mobility because we just moved to the next step. So basically the electric mobility is being implemented now in action. So basically we evaluate and assess the different priorities, the different goals that we put in our roadmap for 2030. So we're just having a follow-up. We receive feedback from the different actors, and we're just working on the specific documents and all the studies that need to be translated into action. So basically, we're just mobilizing the citizens in order to really give its feedback based on its experience on the impact of technologies. So basically, it is a continuous feedback that we receive from the citizens, but also from the academic world. So this allows us to develop something that is much more integrated and comprehensive. So basically, we have also the private sector, we have the government. So we created the national commission so that has been created that is working at all levels. So from the government, so the government is the leader of this council, the National Secretariat for Energy that is presiding this commission, but also we have the Ministry of Economy and Finance, so we have the Ministry of Industry, the Ministry of Environment, we have the regulating authority also, we have the Authority for Rural Development. We have the National Assembly. So we have the National Maritime Association of Panama that is just working with us because they all are linked with energy. So basically, we're just working on how we can reinforce the position of Panama in logistically, and that's why it is very important also for everybody to be there. So basically, we have also the operators, the distributors, companies that work in solar panels. We have also importers, exporters of different types of devices, etc., that are just participating. So what we're just trying to do here is to gather absolutely all the information and make sure that this will continue being a priority in the future, and to make sure that there is a sustainability of the work that we're carrying out. So we're working our energy transition, and I will be extremely happy to answer any question you might have. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Guadalupe. Thank you so much for your speech. It was very interesting to give the example of Panama, because there are many things that we have to take into account in energy transition. So we need to plan based on a green economic model, basically. And it's a very important challenge that we have for the region. And this is very interesting. So after the presentations, we are going to have now the next block in our meeting, which is going to be a question and answers session. So we have Ruben Contreras, who is in charge of energy. Ruben, I am going to give you the floor to moderate this Q&A session with Guadalupe and Arturo. I want to thank Guadalupe and Arturo for these excellent presentations. Both countries have demonstrated very interesting movements forward, through very intelligent and participative processes. So before starting the debate or the questions from on how both countries carried out this long-term planification and the energy transition in Panama and Costa Rica, I would ask both of you, we didn't talk about the SICA. So basically, which is a regional planification effort. So there is an energy strategy, and there was a plan, which is SICA 2030 also. So to both of you, how do you see the role of SICA in terms of its impact on your own national strategies? Do you have the intention to use the regional electrical market and use all its potential regionally or not? I will give the floor to Guadalupe and then to Arturo, maybe. Thank you very much, Ruben. Definitely, we participate actively within SICA and in also CEPAL, the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean. And basically, we are trying to harmonize the interconnection of all the countries in the region. So basically, you didn't mention the connection with Colombia, and this is something that we are just evaluating in Panama. And also with SICA, we the relation of Panama in the development of its strategy. So we were very active because we were we were presiding the initial processes of the regional strategy, and we followed up also in order to make sure that our strategy in Panama is coherent with the regional strategy. And many of these issues that we are working in SICA are associated to how we are just working in Panama. SICA develops a lot of projects in the region that Panama participated in very thoroughly. We have been participating with SICA and other processes also in the use of thermal power plants, etc. So we can use this as an example that really showed many results in other countries in the world, and that would be interesting to consider here in Panama, for example. So definitely SICA is a very important ally to us. And of course, we have been working with them for many years and also with the Economic Commission for Latin America and etc. We have been developing many studies in order to maintain the market at the same level of effectiveness. And I believe that this is one of the regional markets that is really showing the highest level of success due to the figures that we see every year. There are countries that have more exchange than others. Other countries maybe need to push a little bit some work at a national level, but all this is a part of the process. And Panama is just also participating very actively at a regional level in this sense. Thank you so much, Guadalupe. Arturo, do you have anything to add? Yes, Guadalupe just basically talked about all the different issues, but I want to add to what she said, which is this initiative the Regional Integration Initiative has a lot of history, and there are many actually examples in the past, because in Latin America, historically, we had many processes that tried also to work for an integration. So here about this integration of the electric systems, as Guadalupe said, we had a success because it allowed us to have a much more comprehensive vision, and not only at the level of each country. Uh, and I'm saying here how each country needs to solve its problems with regarding energy, but just to have a much higher vision, which is a regional one. And now we are in the next stage. So there are very important changes, as Guadalupe said. Our vision is more focused on a national level, but it is true also at the same time that this is helping us to know that we have a much better support, more possibilities at a regional level that we did not have in the past. And now we can count on this. And in terms of the strategy, before that, there was the 2020 strategy that really reached a lot of success. For example, we could just go beyond many of the goals that were fixed in 2020. So, for example, so in many fields, for example, in terms of electricity coverage, etc., we went beyond goals. In maybe in other fields, we did not really reach the goals, but this was a very important strategy. And now that we have the strategy for 2030, this is going to be very important, because also with the sustainable development goals that are guiding at a world level all these different strategies. So the national plans are just guided by this. So we have the regional plan, the ESCA, which is the 2030 strategy at the regional level, and the national plans. They all somehow are being harmonized with the objectives of sustainable development goals, and also in order to have very concrete objectives for the region. So this strategy 2030 is just englobing all these, and we're working in different directions. Guadalupe just talked about some issues, but for example, I can talk about the technical rehabilitation. So basically, we have developed a lot of technical regulation in terms of the different equipments at a regional level, and there are many other works also that are related to coordination. So the strategy of the demand, for example, in terms of transport, also the energy efficiency. Also, we're just working on the use of the solar energy, also that have a lot to do with the demand also, and that are much more complex, I would say, than, for example, the electrical market. The electrical market is complex per se, but if we just move on to other issues like demand, where we have a diversity of different actors and stakeholders, and we don't have a very clear business model, these are very complex issues that require to move little by little. So that's why we have created a lot of technical groups who are just working in order just to pave the way to an advancement in the region. Thank you very much. This is excellent. It's fantastic to see that it's the only experience that we have in or the region of electrical integration. In the rest of the regions, we don't have this. So basically, to have this perspective and the way how you visualize it and you use it is very interesting. And now we have very little time left. We're going to move on to questions. So Guadalupe, we are asking you. So basically, do you consider that natural gas is going to be able to solve the problem of the variability of renewables, or is it going to be a substitute? And maybe this would be shocking for the people who are just more environmentalists, and they would say, so why not? Why only renewables or only natural gas? Because we all don't have the potential and this advantage that Costa Rica has. Because of this potentiality that you have. Well, thank you very much. This is a very good question. I believe that Panama has a very good advantage, the same as Costa Rica. And when we look at our energy matrix, for example, we have to highlight the dependence that we have on fossil fuels. And because all this energy is just used by transport. But on the other hand, when we look at the electrical matrix, that is much more clean, much more green. So sometimes we can reach 80 or 83% basically of clean renewable energy, hydro, wind, or solar for electricity. So when we study this issue, and why are we just working on electrical mobility? It's just for this, because Panama has a very high potential of renewable energies that we could use. And I can, to go back to what Arturo said, talking about the offer and the demand. So, for example, all these sectors that consume a lot of energy, just to move on to electrical clean energy. So basically, and every person in their homes, they push them to have solar panels on their homes. So in order to electrify their mobility, so it all makes sense. So finally, just a few years ago, talking about natural gas a few years ago was the clean fuel for transition, and Panama saw it like this a few years ago. And then we started having all the public tenders for natural gas that we had a few years ago. And as a result, we have an operational gas plant in the region of Colón, and we have a few projects that are being developed. There are some problems with these projects, but these are just moving. So these contracts have to be respected, and the companies are just working with the regulating authority, with the different operators in the electrical sector in order just to solve these little problems. So Panama is going to have a much higher potential for natural gas, but definitely we need also to see the other side of the coin. So just in case these natural gas plants are not finished, so we're going to see what's going to happen. So we need to always see the different facets, so the reality and the legal part also. So we need to be responsible in everything that we do and in our decisions. So as policymakers, we're just trying to look beyond, for example, we're just studying for example, uh, so we're just working on different issues like storage, for example, which is very important in planification. So basically, we're just working on our strategy of distributed energy, where we can have a higher impact for storage. So we're just studying not only storage, but also as a part of the planification. We also are just considering other types of energy, for example, ocean energy that could have a lot of potential in Panama with the coastline that we have. And all this is a part of the technological and innovation process that we are just developing in our process. We are always following up how our electrical market is just behaving in order to take decisions. Thank you very much. I'm so happy that you're just resolving all the different problems. I'm just so happy to see that you have structured your system in Panama and that you are working block by block. So Arturo, I'm going to ask you a question about Costa Rica, and we're going to wrap up with a question to both of you. So Arturo, I see that you have the seventh National Plan 2015-2030. So you update it, and Guadalupe said that they're constantly updating their plans following the technological changes. So you just talked about the NDCs. I want to know what was the coordination between the NDC, the National Energy Plant, and the decarbonization plan? Because we have three different processes. Did you coordinate between all three processes? And how are you going to articulate this energy national plan following all these technological changes, storage technologies? We see that lithium is going to have its peak, but there are many other alternatives maybe that will become very competitive, the distributed generation, etc. So all these different technologies, how are you going to analyze them? And is there any coordination or synergy between these three processes, NDCs, decarbonizations, and the rest? Well, actually, I have very little time here, but I am talking about high-level tools, NDC, the National Plan, and the Decarbonization Plan. These are plans that establish the main lines or orientations, and these main guidelines are analyzed. The National Energy Plan, for example, was revised in 2019, but what is very important in all this is that we need to quantify, we need to establish very concrete goals that will need more revisions. So we need to establish action plans, roadmaps that are maybe more concrete in reality, a strategy per se, which are these plans. These are strategic plans. A strategy can be revised constantly in order to update this strategy. Just to give you an example, the National Energy Plan establishes that we need to evaluate hydrogen, for example. Hydrogen is an issue, as Guadalupe said, still is facing problems with storage. So maybe we can really just start considering some types of storage technologies, but this is not just a profitable technology. So that's why we need to have a roadmap in our country, but we'll keep on monitoring all the technological advances, and we are going to study and analyze the technology at all times. We need to understand that all these plans and strategies have their auxiliary tools. Of course, we need to revise them. We keep revising them every certain time. So in Costa Rica, we had the first energy plan in 1985. This is our seventh national energy plan. And in 2019, we revised it. I believe that what's very important to understand here that more than a revision of the plan, we need to establish auxiliary planification tools that allow to program very concrete goals like action plans, roadmaps, and all these need to be revised and updated more frequently. So in this sense, the modeling tool and the availability of models that we have in order to evaluate and assess these different technologies in order to study their impact, their viabilities, their economic viability. It is very important to make sure that these tools are available for our planners in order to help them to take the best decisions possible. Yes, it's very important what you said. And Guadalupe also just talked about the auxiliary tools and complementary tools, roadmaps, etc. And to finish, a question to both of you. And Guadalupe just mentioned this when she talked about reactivation. And I'm going to ask you in terms of impact, how did the COVID-19 impact your roadmaps? Did it impact the investments that you had planned, or do you think that it is going to have an impact from now to until 2030? We know that this is going to be the case, but anyway, can you just give us any information? Just to be honest here, with COVID, we have been working our strategy since 2019, and we were going to present it to the cabinet on the 9th of March, which was exactly the day we had the first COVID case in Panama. So we were just going to the presidential palace to make the presentation, and we couldn't basically because of the COVID and the priority that was given to it. But this gave us actually the opportunity to validate what we had in our strategy alignment. So COVID helped us to shed more light, if you want. And during the last year, so we studied all the negative impact that we can have if we didn't do anything. COVID is nothing, for example, compared to, I don't know what crisis, for example, the climate crises that we're going to have in the future are going to have much heavier effects. So in 2020, besides COVID, we carried out an analysis of all our bases not only in our institutions, but with different stakeholders, not only national, but also international. We just talked with IRENA, we received their feedback. We talked with you also, you gave us your feedback. We talked with SICA, received their feedback. So basically, we gathered all this information in order to help us to really understand in a much more comprehensive way, in order to really validate that what we're doing was just making sense. So that's why we needed a feedback from all these observers and organizations who have also a knowledge of all these technological changes, and all the feedbacks were just positive at a national and international level. This gave us a lot more security that what we're doing was just correct, and we kept on in the same direction. And of course, we revised with different institutions, national institutions, in order to validate that all these figures made sense, and that all this plan would be used for the economic reactivation. So we're just drafting the final document, as I said, just studying all these different scenarios. We considered natural gas for 2050, etc. So this is what we have in our scenario. The energy transition scenario is going to really have some level of natural gas, some level of fossil fuels. But when we look at decarbonization, this is much more limited. There is still a little bit of gas, but for fossil fuels, it's completely limited. So basically, the climate balance basically is just to reach a complete decarbonization in 2050. And basically, we are just working on projections for the future. So basically, this is what planning is. Planning is projecting in the future and analyzing to see what makes more sense. And as Arturo said, we need to have a continuous feed update and analysis of all this. Arturo, so I give you the floor now, and we're going to finish this section. In terms of COVID, in my case, in the case of NDC, uh, as I told you, we had a publication at the end of last year, we considered the effect of COVID. So the COVID was seen as an opportunity in a sense, as Guadalupe said. So the climate action in Costa Rica is seen as an opportunity to really have an economic growth. So it's not seen as a burden, but Costa Rica just augmented its ambition in NDCs beyond the limits that were fixed. Why? Because the benefits that we foresee from these actions are much, much better, such as, for example, the social benefits, the health benefits are so much better. So basically, if we can just stop using fossil fuels, and use clean energy for transport, so not only we're just cleaning our environment, but also we see many other benefits, such as, for example, health benefits for our citizens. And so the ambition in Costa Rica for NDCs was augmented, and COVID was not seen as a problem, but it was seen hindering our works, but it was seen as a rebirth, if you wanted, to reinforce our plans to really have a much better, cleaner economic development that is based on neutrality, carbon neutrality, clean energies, and also I talked about the sustainable development goals within which we have many ambitious goals, for example, to clean the electrical matrix, to just improve the electrical transport, but we have many other goals, such as the fight against poverty, that's very important. We have the issue of education, that is very important. So in energy, we, as Guadalupe said, we have a very important participation of fossil fuels in terms of transport, and we have to work on this. And we believe that the logical way forward is electrification of transport, because we have huge advantages, because we can use renewable sources of energy, and we're going to have huge benefits for our citizens. So the vision in Costa Rica was to really use this as an opportunity in order to really push all those initiatives related to investments, all these different initiatives that will reinforce actually the implementation of those plans and that will have very interesting impact and results for the country. Thank you so much, Arturo. We have very little time. I'm sorry. And I believe that this case and the region and the SICA initiative, these are just excellent examples on how we can just work on improving the coordination. And also, I want to really congratulate you for including civil society and academia. We don't see this in many regions and countries in the world, where you have really the academia and the civil society participating so closely. So thank you very much. So there's a huge interest of the people for here. So now many responded to many of the questions.
En sus estudios contemplaron el rol de baterías y la gestión de demanda como soluciones para compensar la intermitencia de los renovables, tanto a pequeña como gran escala. En el caso que sí.
In the case of seed, have you checked if they help to reduce the costs of the system? So this question is for both panels, Guadalupe and Arturo. Yes, in our case, we did include that. For the analysis that we're doing of the energy transition, and among our priorities, it was included. Well, we have not gone into the details yet. That will be developed when we develop the distributed energy strategy, and also when we develop the interconnected national system. That would be the second phase. But as to the scenarios considered for our line of action, yes. And in general, we see a positive impact. But as I said, we will do the details later in roundtables when we develop research projects also. And this is an important part of the academia, by the way. We are basing our transition agenda and our strategies hand in hand with the academia, because we need to do more work, more studies to be able to tackle all these issues that are coming out from consultation. So we need a lot of detail in order to make decisions, but in general, the impact will be positive. Thank you, Guadalupe. Costa Rica. Yes, thank you. there is a purpose in this question, how to face VREs, how to solve that. In Costa Rica, as you know, we have an electric matrix, which is 99.8% renewable generation. As you said, Ruben, thanks to capacity building in hydro, we are able to regulate and complement VREs such as wind. Wind is the one we use the most. And in the future, we hope to develop solar more. As to geothermal, it has been a core energy of key importance. Now, as to option analysis to address VREs, yes, of course, they have been considered, as I said, not only as an option for batteries, but we have also considered hydrogen. And an important topic which is being discussed at regional level now is intelligent networks, demand management. This is going to be very important in the future. We will need to use these capabilities to solve many of these problems entailed by VRE technologies. We would have to better manage. We would have to gain efficiency in quality of networks, for instance. So we are considering these options, storage options, demand management options, intelligent networks. These are topics that are on the table. Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, now we have a poll while we wait for other questions. The polling gives us a chance to interact with all the participants. We have a couple of questions that we're going to ask you. Well, basically two questions, yes. I'd like to know, we would like to know, what are the topics, what are the areas that need strengthening to improve the development and use of long-term energy scenarios for an energy transition? There you have choices: participatory processes, scenarios visualization tools, partnerships with academia and other communities, coordination with the government institutions, and then clarifying the purpose of scenario building. Second question: what characteristics of the energy transition should be included in these scenarios? Electrical vehicles, consumer behavior, response of demand, digitalization, and well, you have them on the screen. So let's continue. Yes, the last one is green hydrogen and also end-use electrification. Also, questions about the consumer behavior, demand-side response. Are you incorporating those topics in your planning work? So if you want, you can answer those questions while we wait for the answers from the polling. So how do you weigh the consumer behavior and the demand-side response in your planning in Panama and in Costa Rica? Definitely, we are always doing follow-up. We do ongoing monitoring. In times of COVID, we were in continuous communication with the distribution networks, for instance. They are providing data month after month, and we observed a change in the use of energy. This was an expected event, of course. Business consumption went down, but residential consumption went up because people had to be locked down, stayed home, they were doing home office, and that's why. And also, as to planning, yes, we are, as I said, doing continuous monitoring, ongoing monitoring of the demand, and we are incorporating that in the demand. We want to create impact by implementing new technologies. And we have to understand how the variation of consumption is. And that also that is dependent on the new technologies that are coming in. So of course, we are considering that in our analysis. Definitely in our administration, and the previous administration also shared the view that we should not make decisions just um, uh, um, non-informed. Rather, we have to make informed decisions and decisions made based on the models that we run. Of course, also with the participation and opinion and feedback of the other stakeholders, academia, communities, etc. And of course, the models are needed to validate. And also after we do the models, we have to validate the model. That's what I mean, to see how the demand is truly behaving. Thank you. Arturo, how do you see that in Costa Rica? Traditionally, we have used tools at the Secretariat for diagnosis, the polling, surveys in the various sectors, and thanks to those surveys, we have been able to define performance, behaviors, preferences of users, consumption. We've done this for a long time. And now we are developing other instruments or tools, automated tools, to making use of technologies, smart technologies. And we developed together with the University of Costa Rica some algorithms that allow us to, for instance, to determine what are what is the use that is being given to the energy. Yes, we run these algorithms on the consumption meters, so we can determine whether the energy is or the electricity is being used for the kitchen or for the room or for the bedroom of whatever. So thanks to these smart technologies, we will be able to monitor, to do automated monitor of some behaviors, consumers' behaviors. Also, we are concerned about modeling. And talking about modeling, we have to be able to define preferences, particularly when we're speaking about model changes or behavioral changes. Perhaps people in the future will prefer to use more intensively public transportation or rather use teleworking. That is, of course, more complicated, but it has always been included in our models. Of course, we have to do some mm, improvement work on that, some enhancements, but we will have to monitor that, consumers' attitudes and behaviors. I know to monitor preferences is quite hard, but if you do a survey today and you ask people, are you willing to use public transportation today if it is improved? Well, sometimes people answer, I don't know, because they don't know what are the improvements we're talking about. They don't know how efficient the transportation system will become. So they don't answer the survey. Whenever you make a survey, you have to use a model to be able to understand changes in attitude, other scenarios, for instance, the use of other efficient technologies. Well, that's it. Thank you, Arturo. Thank you, Guadalupe. We're going to close our polling and let us see the results very briefly. We're running out of time. We have a number of answers. Okay, here are the results. First question, what areas need strengthening to improve the development and use of long-term energy scenarios? Well, the need for coordination among government institutions, then partnerships with the academia, visualization tools, participatory processes, and also clarifying the purpose of scenario. For the second question, what features of energy transition should be included in the long-term scenarios? We have technical tie, demand-side response, and innovation and digitalization, followed by consumer behavior, electromobility, and then identification. I don't know if you want to add anything else to this, or if not, we will wrap up with a photograph for the group. Guadalupe or Arturo, would you like to add something about the responses of the audience? Well, very good answers. Coordination among government institutions, I agree fully, that's key, and that's a strong work that we have done in Panama. Oftentimes, institutions don't talk to each other and they do not know they are working on the same project. So we waste resources, we waste time, whereas we could have been doing joint work. Sometimes institutions do not talk to themselves. They are not aware of the work other institutions do. So this is of utmost importance. And it takes time, of course, to create awareness about this, but it is worth it. It is worth it. In Panama, at the Secretariat, we're working hard on that. We've been holding discussions with members of the diplomatic bodies so that they know that what we are doing. We have been talking to ministries and to other secretariats so that we all join our efforts in a single voice. And we are also using these spaces, forums like this, which are key for sharing information and knowledge. So I agree with the response given, and I missed the second one, but as to the first one, I fully agree. We're aligned on that. Thank you. Thank you, Guadalupe. We are very short of time. Quickly, I agree. I agree. Both answers are accurate. As in to Costa Rica, the difficulty we have had is to coordinate transportation and energy, those two topics, because traditionally those two topics were separated, have been separated. As to energy and environment, well, we are a ministry that tackles and addresses both topics. So there we have had more dialogue, more communication within the ministry. But as to transportation, there is a big need. We have done a lot of work in coordination, and we continue to do so. As to the second question, I agree also. These are very relevant topics for analysis. Thank you again, Arturo and Guadalupe. Thank you indeed for your presentations. Very interesting. Chile is not an exception to the difficulties of coordination among institutions. As you said, Arturo, this new planning is a new reality, and it involves more coordination among ministries or secretariats that in the past were not related, energy, transportation, you name them. So we have a lot of challenges ahead. Well, I invite you for the next session on March the 3rd. We will have the participation of the Ministry of Energy and Non-Renewable Resources of Ecuador, and also the Ministry from Uruguay. And to close, Ruben, would you like to add anything? And also let us have a photograph taken of all the panel members and the group. So Ruben, would you join us? Thank you, Antonio. Just to thank everybody. This is not IRENA, ICLAC. This is what Panama and Costa Rica are doing. So that was the purpose of this seminar today. And in the past, we did it with Colombia and Brazil, and I think it was a very positive discussion that we had. They have also their own approach as to how to face planning. Very interesting. And I think we can learn a lot from them as well, to learn how to define the best mechanisms to move forward. Well, thank you, everybody. After Pablo, I will ask you, please, to turn on your camera so we can have a photograph taken, okay? But after Pablo makes his closing address. Guadalupe, Arturo, excellent presentations. We are really amazed at the information and knowledge that you have acquired in the past years in planning. We are very enthusiastic. We would like to see how those plans become a roadmap and then an implementation effort. These are plans that should result into concrete roadmaps and action plans. Those are valuable lessons that we have learned from you today. And also we invite all of you, we encourage all of you, all the participants, all those who work in the ministries and planning departments, etc., to join us at the long-term energy scenarios network. You are welcome to participate in our network. You can, in this way, be with us in other events and seminars on this topic, energy transition. Thank you again, Costa Rica and Panama. Thank you indeed, and see you again. Thank you very much, Pablo, Ruben, and the support staff, Diego, Nadine, all of you. We have also TI Rafael from ICLAC. So see you again on March the 3rd. Thank you. Somebody takes the photograph, please.